Good morning. Welcome to the county board meeting here on Tuesday, March 20th, 2018. Prior to our meeting, it is intent of the county board of the County of Mclean, State of Illinois, to approve an operating assistance application for show bus. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by McLean County at the McLean County Government Center, room 400, 115 East Washington Street, Bloomington, Illinois, at 9 a.m. on March 20th, 2018, regarding an IDOT fiscal year 2019 combined application for Section 5311 and Downstate Operating Assistance Public Transportation Grant. At this hearing, McLean County will afford an opportunity for interested persons or agencies to be heard with respect to the proposal by the McLean County Highway Department for show bus for rural public transportation for McLean, Livingston, Iroquois, Ford, DeWitt, and Macon counties. At this time, I hereby declare this public hearing and meeting open. Do I have anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition of the application? Do I have anyone present who wishes to speak? I'll ask one more time. Pursuant to the rule, is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition or in favor of the application? Is there anyone who would like and wishes to submit any kind of written information? Hearing none, I declare this hearing closed. At this time, I'd like to call this meeting to order. We have two members who have requested to be with us today on the phone conference. So pursuant to Section 20-20C2A of the McLean County Code, Member Gordon and Member Wendt have requested to attend and participate in this meeting remotely. Proper notice was received in accordance with our board rules. Is there any objection to Member Gordon and Member Wendt attending and participating remotely? Hearing none, I deem this request to attend and participate remotely approved, and we'll move on. Welcome, Mr. Gordon. Welcome, Member Wendt. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to refrain from calling you guys George, because I know that won't help much. And we'll move on from there. At this time, we all please rise for the invocation by Member Barnett.
As we've just observed St. Patrick's Day, it seemed prudent to share this Irish blessing as our invocation. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Amen.
Amen.
Would the clerk please call the roll? Yeah.
Okay. Chuck Erickson.
Here.
George Gordon.
Present.
Mark Johnson.
Here.
Randall Martin.
Here.
Catherine Metzger. Scott Murphy.
Here.
Eric Rankin.
Present.
Carla Robustelli. Susan Schaefer.
Here.
Ryan Scritchlow.
Here.
Paul Segabiano.
Present.
David Selzer.
Here.
James Soldner.
Here.
George Wendt.
Present.
Lori Woolrab. Josh Barnett. Jacob Beard. William Casely. Don Cavallini. And John McIntyre.
Here. Here. We have 19 members present and 1 absent, and so we do have a quorum. We have appearance by members of the public and county employees today, and so at this time I'd like to call to the podium. Our first speaker will be Ms. Kim Brucker. You have 3 minutes to speak on your subject. Thank you. There is a screen up there with the time on it for you. Thank you.
I did mail. I'm starting again. Once again, I am here to voice my concerns regarding another wind farm in Mclean County, hoping for a different outcome than the Invenergy vote. I did mail each of you a letter. However, in the event you did not read it, I'd like to take this opportunity to have you hear parts of it now. While listening to the ZBA deliberation regarding EDP's application, these are some things that were said that I hope you will take into consideration. The board admitted that EDP was conservative in their noise level estimates. Therefore, they're requiring a sound study after the turbines are up and going. The same would go for the wildlife studies. Why approve this project, expect our community to be the guinea pigs for all of the studies, and then decide that changes need to be made? What happens then? The board requested that 4 of the turbines be moved from 1,650 to 2,000 feet to help with noise and flicker. Isn't that basically an admission that they believe these issues will be a problem? When discussing any health issues, it was stated, in my heart, I don't believe there are any health issues. I hope there aren't any health issues. A yes vote on top of that statement frightens me. They discussed that there have been no complaints from other area wind farms. They brought up Mr. Ted Hartke, and I know for a fact that Mr. Ryan from Carlock came and spoke at the Invenergy hearings. I'm curious, how many negative experiences would they have had to have before they took them serious, and what defines a complaint? These 2 gentlemen are people that do live in the footprint of a windmill farm. They both had very negative things to say. How are these not considered complaints? Invenergy and EDP are not part of this county, nor do I believe that they care to be, other than for a potential financial gain. None of them reside here. These companies are coming in, dividing our communities, yet the ZBA, as well as some of the Mclean County board members, seem eager to do what the wind companies want, as opposed to listening to what the actual residents want. It feels like many members have walked into this room, looked at us, and said, we no longer care what happens to you. We're going to favor these outsiders that have come offering money. During testimony, besides union people looking for a quick paycheck, there were far less participants that were willing to come and speak, as opposed to the number of non-participants that will be living in the affected area, asking you to listen and understand why they are not comfortable with this being approved. That speaks volumes to me. Unless you consider the fact that participants are not allowed to discuss much about their agreement, this makes me wonder, if this is such an amazing thing coming to our community, why the secrets? Shouldn't the wind companies be proud of what they're bringing here? What could they possibly have to hide? I know it was brought up at the Invenergy vote that if you couldn't walk away from the meeting that day feeling good about the decision you made, then that would be a problem. Do you honestly feel good about the decision you made that day? I believe I can speak for all of us when I say that we have other things we'd rather be doing with our time. But for us, we have just one chance to speak up about the impact this will have on our homes. Please listen to our concerns and please consider them when you vote. Understand that we live where we do because we value what comes with rural life. It's a different way of living that I imagine many people can't necessarily appreciate or understand. I can say that you certainly value things a lot more when you stand to have them taken from you by no fault or choice of your own. You can still protect us and the things we value. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kim. Next speaker is Tim Jolly.
Good morning. I love living in Mclean County. I've lived here all my life. Our family came here from Germany in 1864 and established the farm of which I'm going to be living on. How can something that operates at 30 to 35% efficiency seem to be a good idea? That's what these windmills operate. How can just a few people make this project go through when a clear majority is set against it? We will be expected to live at minimum distances to a 550-foot monstrosity, rotating and causing flicker at the maximum allowed level of noise from regulations made in the 1960s, 50 years ago. Dr. Schomer recommends that setbacks should be set so that the noise levels at the residences should be between 38 and 40 dBA. Dr. Schomer helped write these Illinois Pollution Control Board regulations. His testimony was undisputed and no doubt has the most experience, knowledge, and expertise of all the witnesses called to testify. Dr. Punch and the World Health Organizations have the same findings. Since when does a special use permit get approved that has not met the 7 standards for the issuing of the special permit? You are voting on something that is incomplete at best, with no due process to make sure it is legal. Please do the right thing. Deny this application and make the ZBA and EDPR do things right. Reconsider the Invenergy vote today from the February 20th meeting. Deny it and make Invenergy and the ZBA do things right. It is their burden of proof that has to be brought upon to show that it is okay for the residents. If you can cast your vote, if you cast your vote for this to save your seat on this board, shame on you. If you vote for this for the money at the risk of harming residents of Mclean County, shame on you as well. Don't make us, the people who love where they live, the way it is now, your sacrificial lamb. There should be no question these projects were not done in an ethical manner, and they should be denied. Don't let politics play into this. This is not politics 101. This is our lives and our livelihood at stake. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Travis Taylor.
Hi, my name's Travis Taylor. I'm speaking in regards to the EDP wind project. Many people affected by this project have 1 or 2, maybe even 3 wind turbines proposed near their home. We, on the other hand, have 13 turbines within 1 mile. EDP stated that they acknowledge that at times the sound levels caused by the project may exceed the legal limit at our home in writing. This project will affect my home. There is no question about it. The fact is that the zoning board did not meet the 7 standards of special use permits. During deliberations, one member stated that the property values go down, but it's okay because the farm ground values go up. This is not okay for someone like me who owns a large, beautiful home in the country, but no farm ground around it. Another has been quoted in the local press stating that none of us are guaranteed to live anywhere without annoyances. An appropriate annoyance to me is following a combine for a few miles once or twice a year during harvest, not having to live in the middle of a wind farm 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This isn't something that will come and go, but instead affect my life every second for the next 20 to 30 years. Perhaps since it's a commercial business, they should only be allowed to run 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. I appreciate several of you attending some of the zoning board meetings. If you were in attendance, You've had the opportunity to hear that there is much more opposition to this project than what is being reported. I also appreciate the zoning board recommendations to extend the setbacks on the 3 nearest turbines to our house. However, I had several more requests that were not addressed. For example, require significant reduction in the number of turbines allowed to be so close to my home. 20 within a mile and a half is too extensive and obtrusive. Require EDP to remove a transmission line that is being proposed to be located 603 feet away from my home, as they have the participating land to do so, but refuse to make this change to protect my family. Require EDP to move an access road so construction traffic does not pass by my home where there is 2 small children that will be playing outside. Again, EDP has the appropriate participating land to make this change, but refuse to protect my family. Please do not rush the vote simply to gain potential economic growth. This should not be about money. You should vote to protect the county residents. The decision will affect my family's life for the next 20 to 30 years. We do not want to be anyone's science experiment. These turbines are larger and untested in real life. Please vote no on this project until the appropriate independent research and adequate safety requirements in place for my family. Thank you. Travis Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Next speaker is Mr. Mike Matiku.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you today. I want to speak in support of the EDP wind farm project. And I look at the criteria the Zoning Board of Appeals uses. Number 1 is welfare of the people of McLean County. A good job is the best welfare program there is. And a good job is a result of this project. Just as laborers in McLean County through Twin Oaks or the Twin Oaks and the Twin Grove projects, we've booked over 100,000 hours of good work that's resulted in $4 million in the pockets of McLean County residents. That's economic development. We have an opportunity here for a 21st century project that will continue to make this county a leader and also build alternative energy systems for this country. This is not just good for workers, this is good for landowners, this is good for local businesses that will get opportunities out of this project. So I really commend that you please vote in favor of this project, and I also want to take a moment to commend the Zoning Board of Appeals. As I've sat through many hours of hearings with that group, I've seen a fair, impartial, deliberative body that really takes their time to listen to every point of view, to make sure everybody is heard, and I think we as a county deserve our thanks to them because I've been very impressed with the way that group operates and the way they make sure that their process includes everyone and includes everyone in a thorough manner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Amy Winterland.
It does not require a 2/3 vote. It's in the same category.
Thank you.
Hi, Amy Winterland. So in the past, you've listened to me before, and I've tried to be politically correct and logical and unemotional, and I have spent hours in the testimonies, and I actually wrote a letter to all of the county board members. I released it on Saturday. It included a 5-page PDF. I don't know how many of you had an opportunity to look at that, but it was filled with facts. I hope you did take an opportunity to look at that. But having done all that, I am going to say a few things that probably aren't as politically correct as I like to be. First of all, I think this process was rushed. I would like to point out that there are 2 transcripts that are not even available on the public record yet. The March 8th and the March 12th final deliberations have not been published, so you could not read them. I'm going to speak a little bit about those final deliberations and what our zoning board said. One of the things that they said was, in the future, applicants should try to adhere to the IDNR recommendations and to the ordinance regulations. Imagine that. In this particular application, 2 houses are set within the 3 times setback, and that was allowed. 2 turbines are set within the 500-foot perennial stream setback, and that was allowed. And 5 turbines are going to be allowed within the 1/2 mile INAI site setbacks, and that too was allowed. That's 16% of this project's 58 turbines, which are not in compliance and which in fact are being allowed. I will also point out that there were expert testimony this time on behalf of the opposition. That's a new thing for the zoning board. They really haven't had to deal with that in the past. But you know what? They treated our expert testimony the same way they treat our non-expert testimony like this, like me. They said, I didn't find that convincing. In fact, they said about Dr. Punch and his health testimony, his evidence just wasn't credible. But no one from the other side refuted any of that testimony. They said, the property values, we did not find either side convincing. But you know what? It's the applicant who has to provide the burden of proof. They're the ones that have to be convincing. So if the zoning board didn't think either side was convincing, what are they voting on? I'm going to say, please vote no. Vote no to this application. We have tried as residents. We have brought in experts. Again, they were summarily dismissed. We have tried. So in my final, if you're going to vote yes, I have 2 requests. First, please protect our INAI site, the Henline Creek. They did not include a mitigation plan in their conversation. Take that back. The zoning board did include it in their conversation, and EDPR did not include it in their bullets. It needs to be included. Second of all, please protect our residents and vote for a 2,000 setback for all the residences impacted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. John C. Capasso.
Good morning. Yes, my name is John Capasso, and I'm a retired school superintendent from the area. My last gig was at Prairie Central, 22% of which is in Mclean County. No one asked me to be here today. Everyone's concerns, I think, are earnestly stated and much appreciated, at least by me. And I hope they are all addressed, because I am here as a former school leader to endorse the Bright Stalk Wind Farm project unreservedly. Schools, especially rural schools, need money desperately. Educating children for tomorrow's world is expensive and becoming more expensive. Enter now costly security measures on top of everything else. The tax base of farm and residential has proven to be insufficient. Thus, myriad mergers, and I fear a growing tolerance for mediocrity. Rural schools must expand their tax bases by attracting industry and mineral. For Prairie Central, since that's the school I know best, 41 turbines proposed by Bright Stalk at 3.45 megawatts would mean an estimated $20.7 million in additional assessed value, which is roughly the equivalent of 100 500-acre farms. It would mean $2.1 million in added revenue over 4 years, and with Mclean Energy Center, a combined $2.9 million in added revenue over 4 years, and that's partitioning out general state aid. The new money would make affordable 30 teachers, a dozen mobile laptop labs, and 8 new buses. 2 quick points, and then I close. We teach kids about renewable energy and saving our environment for another generation or 2. So it's time to practice what we preach. We need to consider also the financial boon for schools and other taxing bodies in this county that can result from this. For the sake of rural schools in Mclean County, please welcome the Bright Stalk Wind Farm project and make the process so seamless that it will attract other companies to also make such proposals. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Julie Cotter.
Hi, I'm Julie Cotter. I also sent a letter to every board member that hopefully you got, and I will not go back through those points. It's interesting that I'm going after Mr. Capasso. I would like to just point out quickly that when questioned at the zoning board meetings, he did admit that that huge number for Prairie Central was 1% of their budget. Throughout this entire process, we have been instructed to be gracious and tactful and to keep our emotions out of it. This is an emotional situation for those of us that are impacted. It's impossible to keep emotions out of it anymore. It hasn't seemed to work, what we've been doing, so I apologize for maybe what I'm about to say. There are over 600 of us in Mclean County, more than some of the towns in this county, and our voices are being put down and have actually been insulted, as was the case with the last ZBA meeting. One board member mentioned that him and his wife had gone out to a wind farm, and we have constantly been told they cannot research anything when we've asked them if they've checked out a certain thing, and that they thought that there was no problem with the noise. Had they listened to our expert witness, Ted Hartke, who has testified twice, that him and his wife did the same thing before turbines were built around his house, and they thought, we can live with these, there's no problem. He was actually a proponent of it until they had to leave their home because of the noise. EDP has not met the burden of proof on many of the issues, all of which have been mentioned in letters sent to you and also today. We all know, as it is a fact, an honest one, that it is a given that both turbine companies only operate at 30 to 40% efficient. This is not what we need to be teaching our kids about at school. They are also not green, as many people are led to believe, including probably many of these people in Bloomington Normal that we are told all of Bloomington Normal supports these. The fact is they do more damage to our environment than what they help it, which is in large part why these companies need a lot of their special use permits in the first place. Oh, we only kill this many birds, we only kill this many bats. The zoning board has not stood up for their standards number 1 and 2, and which are the top of their list. Our country still stands on the statement, in God we trust. Yet we are allowing much of what God has given us in this county to be destroyed and taken over by greed and money. A very high price to everyone except those who benefit from it. I have a quick hypothetical question for all of you. Suppose you purchased 5 acres of land in the middle of a beautiful timber owned by someone else. You enjoyed the deer, the beautiful birds, including raptors that we've been told don't exist, and bats that keep the mosquito population down, and even occasional eagle. You have loved having your windows open in the good weather so your home was cooled by the breeze and you could hear the birds in nature. Then you're told that owners of the timber are going to come in and cut it down because they can sell the wood and make a lot more money than what they're already making. The wood would then help a few others, maybe even be part of an addition at a school made all of wood. Would you not want them to reconsider? Maybe the school could use steel studs. Maybe they could use brick on the exterior. Maybe instead of the wood for floors, they could use concrete. We all feel that we are being sacrificed by this county. And it's given to industry to invade our rural areas and destroy it and many of our lives. Health, happiness, safety, morale, comfort, and welfare, all are which supposed to be protected by the zoning board. Thank you for your time and listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Deanne Moran.
Good morning. My name is Deanne Moran, and I live in Lexington, Illinois. I am here to plead for you to vote against the EDP wind turbine project. During the testimony for this proposal, EDP failed to show the burden of proof for points 1, 2, 3, and 7 of the standards from your ZBA for hearing on special use permits. Both Invenergy and EDP submitted applications for these projects knowing that they had turbines located too close to non-participating residents. The sound of several turbines would exceed the Illinois Pollution Control Board regulation at certain times of the year. If they exceed these levels, it would be like exceeding the speed limit, and EDP would be in direct violation of IPCB regulations. Violation. That word should weigh heavily on you, as it does on me. When your ZBA voted yes to the EDP project, they also made stipulations for a 2,000-foot setback for 4 wind turbines near 2 non-participating residents, turbines 83, 85, 95, and 97. But what about the other residents? If you are wanting to push this project through, even while in direct violation of IPCB sound regulations, then give all the residents in the footprint the 2,000-foot setbacks. In closing, please consider this. Your vote may benefit the many in our county to some small effect, but the effect on the few impacted by this project, and by the few, I am referring to the 92% of non-participating landowners in the proposed project area, will cause irreparable harm to our landscape and to our community. McLean County was literally built upon the backs of small landowners. These small landowners still exist today. And even in the face of our increasingly industrial farming culture, these small landowners are not only citizens of McLean County, they are your constituents, they are your neighbors and your friends. They are my neighbors and my friends. Whether you choose to vote yes or no with regards to this project, please remember that the small landowners and their families are future leaders in McLean County. I ask that you vote no on this project, not only for our present interests, but also to set an example for our future generations so that they may understand that no matter how uncomfortable principles will always outlive short-term gain. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Jeff Powell, next.
Good morning. As I first learned of these wind projects, mostly through word of mouth, I had many questions and concerns for my family and the area we call home. The more and more I asked around, the more and more I was told that these projects were rubber stamped, that they were just going through the motions, that it was a done deal. I refused to believe that the people's voice would not be heard, that the residents with nothing to gain but everything to lose would become somewhat would call sacrificial lambs. I refused to believe that when I've been told that because our county is strapped for tax revenue, it would cause the issue of health and well-being to be overlooked. I attended all but one due to work of the EDP hearings. It was clear to me, among others on both sides of the issue, that the ZBA had their minds made up even before the public was heard. It was a very painstaking process for my family and I, as well as friends and neighbors, to try to mount a case for our concerns against a company that has countless resources and appointed county officials who seem to cater only to the applicant. It's clear to many of us that much of the very credible evidence brought forth was ignored. Testimony from Dr. Schomer showed the importance of the Illinois Pollution Control Board's regulations and that the limits are firm like a speed limit, not averaged over a week or months. Dr. Punch, a very credible witness that stated he is not anti-wind, he is pro-health, testified to many peer-reviewed studies that showed the adverse health effects of turbines being placed too close to homes. Mr. Keelish, an appraiser, showed very clearly that property values diminished within a mile of turbines. EDP's witness did so poorly and that in cross-examination, they clearly agreed that their report did nothing to prove that turbines did not diminish values within a mile. The deliberation of the ZBA was a difficult process to sit through. The ZBA seemed to focus on their own opinions and judgment instead of what was put into evidence. Some of the board members went as far as to say the evidence was confusing when they had every opportunity to question and clarify. So this brings me here today to plead to you, the county board, to deny these applications as they stand, or at the very least afford us the protection of larger setbacks with the requirements of the evidence provided, and not our current county ordinance, which we believe fails to protect non-participant residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Kelly Dezan.
Good morning. As a registered nurse, I'm here to discuss the health concerns this morning. With any major decision, it is prudent to consider all sides and to seek guidance from experts when necessary. In the case of your ZBA, testimonies were arbitrarily listened to or tossed out based on whether those testimonies fit your ZBA's preconceived agenda for the EDP hearings. We heard the following points from expert Dr. Jerry Punch. The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of infirmity or disease. It considers annoyance to lead to a deterioration of health. The EPA and the National Institutes of Health both speak of exposure to constant noise levels leading to numerous adverse health effects, such as high blood pressure, increased cortisol levels, sleep disruption, loss of productivity, weight gain, decreased learning capacity, heart health, etc. This EDP project would expose at least 1 in 10 people in the project area to high annoyance and some adverse health effects when DBA levels are higher than 35. In his conclusion, Dr. Punch stated, annoyance can lead to health issues based on the World Health Organization's definition of health, and there are many anecdotal and peer-reviewed scientific studies that demonstrate both direct and indirect associations between audible and inaudible wind turbine noise and a variety of adverse health effects. Infrasound at levels below what we can even hear has been shown to relate directly to negative sensations and adverse health effects. Therefore, what we cannot hear can hurt us. These statements were made by experts with years of study and experience. EDP did not show evidence to prove otherwise. How then can your ZBA boldly state, quote, there are no ill effects from these turbines, unquote? That statement can only be made and agreed with when a ZBA has arbitrarily thrown out what they did not want to hear. How many experts and personal testimonies will it take before someone will be brave enough to stand up for what is best for the people rather than for what will pad the county's pocketbooks? Why are you ignoring evidence and voting yes while acknowledging confusion about some of the most important details of this project? It's time to quit seeing only dollar signs. As I said to the ZBA, forcing us to live unwillingly and unsafely in the footprint of these wind projects will force each of you to live with the weight of that decision. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes appearances by members of the public. Now have you all referred to your agenda this time. You have the item number 7, the consent agenda in front of you. What say you? Motion by member Segoviano and second by member Cavallini to approve the consent agenda as presented. Are there any comments or questions at this time? If none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Motion. Was that a yes vote from Mr. Wendt, I believe?
That was a yes vote from member Wendt, correct?
I voted aye.
Yes.
Member
Okay.
Gordon, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
I vote aye.
There you go.
Okay. Motion was unanimous. I'd like for you to refer to pages 33 and 37 in your packet for item D, which is a transfer item which requires a 2/3 vote. Is there anyone that wishes to have their vote recorded at this time? If not, then it was a unanimous vote, and the consent agenda has passed. And we will move on to, we have no approval, we have no resolutions today or commendations. So we'll move on to standing committee reports. First of all, the Executive Committee, Vice Chairman Solner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Executive Committee has one item for action today. It's item 8A1A, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending McLean County fiscal year 2017 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance for General Fund 001, County Board 001. It comes from the administration, requires a 2/3 vote, and I so move.
Motion by Vice Chairman Solner. Is there a second? Second by Member Robustelli. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. This requires a 2/3 vote. Anyone wish to have their vote recorded as a nay? If not, the motion is carried.
That's the only action item we have today. There are various other reports, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll move on to the report of the Health Committee Chair, Member Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health Committee has two items for action today. Item B1A is request approval and emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2017 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance for the Health Department Fund 112, and I so move, and this requires 2/3.
Thank you. A motion by Member Schaefer. Is there a second? Second by Member Segoviano. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor signify by please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion has carried. Anyone wish to have their vote recorded as a nay? Thank you. We'll move on to item B.
Thank you. Item B1B is request approval and emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2017 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance for the Health Department Fund 103, which requires 2/3, and I so move.
Motion by Member Schaefer, second by Member Cavallini. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion has carried. Mr. Gordon. Anyone wishes to have a nay vote recorded? Thank you.
Our general report can be found on the unapproved minutes packet, pages 24 through 27.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the Land Use and Development Committee, Chairman Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Land Use and Development Committee brings item 8C1A for action. Approve the request of Lexington Chenoa Wind Farm, LLC, by EDP Renewables North America, LLC, in case SU-18-02. It is requesting a special use for a wind energy conversion system wind farm on approximately 4,922 acres in the agricultural district on property located in Chenoa, Yates, and Lawndale Townships, and generally bounded to the west by Old Route 66, to the north by 3200 North Road, to the east by County Highway 13, and the south by the line established by 2300 North Road if it were extended. As I said at the last meeting, it's my job to present it. It's not my job to move it.
Member Erickson declines to move the motion. Is there a motion from the floor? Motion by Member Robustelli. Is there a second? Second by Member Solner. Yes, comments or questions? Member Cavallini?
I'd like to move to amend the motion that is currently on the floor.
Amended to what?
I have some papers that I will distribute, and I'll give you yours, Bob. And just pass the others down, if you will, and where they end, that's where they end, so that people can have a chance to look at what I'm trying to accomplish. As those papers are being passed around, I think that of all the years that I've had the opportunity to serve on the Mclean County Board, there has only been a relatively few number of issues that have really impacted us so strongly as this particular issue that we're dealing with today.
Excuse me, Member Cavallini, but would you get your motion out on the floor? Your amendment,
Okay,
please.
it's still going
And-
around,
And
so-
as it's going around, they'll have an opportunity to read. I appreciate your
Okay, my motion is
patience
as
on this.
follows. This board, what I've tried to do here is to give you information that you already have, but with changes that I'm making in the original text. So from the standards for recommending, standard 1 on page 54, paragraph 1, it currently says, this board also recommends that the applicant will need to complete a sound study within, and I'm asking you to delete 18 months of the start of the commercial operations of the WECS and replace that with 2 to 4 months. That's step 1. Standard number 1, page 55, paragraph 2, it says no turbine will be located closer than 6 times or 3,300 feet, delete 1,600 feet of the height of the tip of the blade to a non-participating occupied residence unless the homeowner and the applicant agree to a closer distance, which will entitle such property owners annual payments for the life of the project. The third change is also from Standard 1, page 55, paragraph 4. It states the application states that the applicant commits to meet with participating and non-participating landowners in the project area upon request and will resolve issues of concern. And what I'm asking you to do is to drop request. Upon request and will resolve issues of concern, including noise, shadow, or flicker effect, telecommunications, aerial application to agricultural land, traffic, or other operational aspects of the project in a timely manner. I want that added, in a timely manner. Standard 1, page 56, before the IDNR recommendations, the applicant will consult with IDNR and USFWS on any follow-up issues raised with respect to the results of these post-construction studies. Add, furthermore, the applicant will conduct a mitigation plan to ensure no net loss of aquatic biodiversity within the INAI section as a whole of Henline Creek. On the second page, if you flip it over, this is from Standard 2, page 57, end of paragraph 1, where it reads, this board found that evidence was presented on both sides of residential property values, higher and lower. It was found that credible evidence was not presented that the value of residential property values would go down. Add, however, non-participating property owners will be guaranteed by the applicant to receive fair market value for their property if values in fact do decline. Upon the written request to the applicant of the non-participating homeowner, an independent appraisal will be made to determine a baseline value to the date of commercial operation of the WECS. The appraisal will be filed with the county, the company, and the homeowner. If the impacted homeowners decide to relocate, they will not incur any financial loss from the sale of their residence. And the last item from stipulations, page 59, number 5, the applicant shall complete a sound study within, as indicated earlier, 2 to 4 months, delete 18 months.
I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to take a look and read over the amendment as stated is a motion on the floor. Was there a second? Did we have a second? Second by Member Erickson. This is, I'm going to give everybody an opportunity just for a second, and then I'm going to call on Mr. Beard and see if you have anything you want to add, since I know you indicated you may have an amendment as well. Any comments or questions on this amendment? If you have a separate one, we'll vote on, take them separately this time, okay? If not, then I will call the question. This requires a majority vote, and we'll have a roll call vote. Any discussion? I'm sorry. Member Segoviano.
Just a matter of information. There's a lot of proposed changes here, and I'm just wondering, was these ever presented to our zoning officer, Phil Dick, for his interpretation of these, and also for the state's attorney's office, the legitimacy of these? I mean, we were just handed this, and I don't know where we stand on this.
I think Mr. Cavallini will have to answer your question for you.
These were not submitted in advance to anyone else. It's my understanding that we as a county board have the privilege and the right, if we so choose, to revise the Zoning Board of Appeals as the way we see fit. Right. And so I'm suggesting that we make these, what I consider to be relatively small changes. I would like to talk, I live in District 1, as all of you know. And so I have, I guess, become very acquainted with and impacted by this proposed, or both of these proposed wind farms. I believe that what we are missing, and again, I said this the last time I was here, it's not my intent to kill the wind farm. I agree with Mr. Capasso. They will bring in money, much needed money for schools. I agree with Mr. Matika. They will be providers of good paying jobs. All of that is a plus. What we seem to be missing is the fact that there are people who are going to be impacted one way or the other by these turbines. I think we have to show a little empathy for those people who will be living by these giant turbines. Let me give you an example. I don't know, are you able to put the map on for me, John? The map of the county, the wind farm area?
I know you previously requested that, and I believe staff has concurred. As long as no information is introduced outside the public hearing process, there is a map available for you to refer to. It's on the screen now.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank you, John, for contacting Bill, for Bill contacting our computer technology people, and for those people having the ability to let us visualize the scope of this wind farm. Now, it's not only the area that we're looking at, but we're looking at, and it's really kind of even hard to see even with the map as I look at it, where these are placed in relationship to people's homes. One of the things that I think we fail to realize, and it's easy to do this because when you go and drive to Twin Groves and Twin Oaks and you see those wind farm turbines, you have a mental image of how big they are. But Invenergy's is larger. EDP is larger than Invenergy's. It's interesting, if you've been to the city of Chicago and have stood next to the Tribune Tower and looked up at that magnificent, iconic building, you are looking at a structure that stands 462 feet to the very top floor. 462 feet. When you stand next to an EDP renewable turbine, you're looking at a machine that stands 550 feet tall with moving parts. Now, if you are suddenly find yourself next to this machine, and keep in mind, if I bought a house and a development is by an airport, and I made the decision, oh, I like this development here, I like this house, I'm going to buy it. Then after I move in, I think, oh, gee, I'm being annoyed by the sound of the airplanes. We need to complain to the airport to do something about that sound. It's annoying to me. Well, you know, I made the decision to buy the house after the airport was built. In this situation, these people who have lived on their homes for a lifetime, before wind farms were even thought about, suddenly now will be waking up after the construction is completed, maybe in a year and a half to 2 years, next to this big, huge, gigantic machine. They never asked for it. Their way of life is going to be transformed. And I think that it is just plain wrong for us not to somehow show these people that we do care. We are empathetic. We understand the situation that they're in. And so the least we can do it, and believe me, what I've suggested here is I feel the very least we can do. It doesn't kill this wind farm, but it does offer the constituents that I represent and that Catherine represents at least a little something to show them, well, we do care. And I hope we do. And I hope that you will approve these amendments. Thank you.
Is any other? Yes, sir. Member Wendt, you have the floor.
Well, I have a comment to make. There's 6 of us who represent the county areas. There's 14 that live in the cities. Before we vote on any of this, think about this. If the 6 of us had the power to put a land dump in the middle of one of your cities so that we could generate some money for us, how would those 14 people like that idea? We're sitting here, the 6 of us, and I think the majority of the people that represent the county areas are against these wind farms because our constituents don't want them. And I think that before you vote, think about the fact that we, the 14 of you that are living in the city, are taking advantage of your ability to change the environment of the people out here in the outskirts and the counties. And I think that you should be aware of that and understand that if the power was reversed, you'd be very upset. And I think that this wind farm should be voted no on. Thank you for the time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have an amendment on the floor. The floor is still open. Please limit your discussion to the amendment at this point in time. Further discussion or comments? Member Sulzer, you'll be next.
So with the change to the 6 times or 3,300 feet, how many wind turbines and residences does that affect?
I cannot answer that question. I do not know.
Okay, so from the comment in the back about fair market value, I mean, I understand that there's an appraisal, but how are you going to determine the other factors that go into property values? Because the reason I ask that is if this really was the case that the wind turbines actually impacted it, I think we would have seen that in our own assessment of the property values that have been out there forever. And I've looked, I cannot find any decrease from that. So I'm just trying to determine if we put that in there, how are you going to measure that?
Well, it seems to me that, we're hearing evidence that, yes, there could be an impact negatively. No, it's really not going to impact. Do we really know? Do we really know? I'm trying to establish a baseline so that we can determine, yes, they are lower. The values will be low. And if they are, it's going to impact the county because it's going to impact our tax base.
Right, but my point is we haven't seen that in the other.
Well, we haven't seen a wind farm out here in District 1.
Well, not
we
in
haven't
District
seen it.
1.
So how can you?
So we don't have an answer even with this amendment, I guess is what I'm asking. We don't have an answer that's going to give us the answer either way with this amendment.
I don't know. I think it will offer us something more than what we have.
It's just a question. And then the 2 to 4 months, it says to start at the commercial operation of the wind farm. So what does that mean? The first turbine twirling or the last?
When they switch that wind farm on, that's the time that starts. When that thing starts spinning, that's the start of commercial operation.
Okay, thank you. It's the chair's goal to maintain decorum, and I know it's very difficult. I know it's difficult, and there is an opportunity there for question and answers. Member Segoviano.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to refer back to my question. I was not questioning or denying Mr. Cavallini's right to make a substitute motion. All I asked was a simple question. Had it been shared with our zoning office or our state's attorney in order to answer something? That's all I asked. And he turned it like I was dying. It wasn't my intention. I simply asked a question. I think the record will show, was it shared with the zoning board and the state's attorney's office? That's it.
Thank you very much for your clarification. Member Baird.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll intend to vote no. I will vote no on this amendment. In talking to residents and reviewing the hearing, am also intending to propose an amendment and would prefer to do that after this is voted on. Although there are two things here that are similar, and I'd be happy to integrate into my amendment, and I'll do that now, but I'll be voting no on what Mr. Cavallini presented.
Do you wish to try to amend or his amendment, or shall we take these separately? That's fine with me. Okay. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'm going to call the question. Mr. Johnson? Okay. The question is, as you have in front of you, Member Cavallini's amendment to the original motion, we will take a roll call vote. Member Casely?
I would like to send this back to the Zoning Board of Appeals to consider Member Cavallini's proposals here and get the view of the Zoning Board of Appeals with respect to these proposed amendments. So I move to send this matter back.
I think we have to vote on the amendment on the floor first, and then I'll entertain a motion. Thank you. So the motion will be yes vote in favor of Mr. Cavallini's amendment as presented in front of you, and a no vote is to decline. Thank you, Member Casely. We'll get back to you on that. So will the clerk please call the roll, and the chair will vote.
Chuck Erickson?
Yes.
George Gordon?
No.
Mark Johnson?
Yes.
Randall Martin?
Yes.
Catherine Metzger, not here. Scott Murphy?
No.
Eric Rankin?
No.
Carlo Robustelli? Susan Schaefer? Ryan Scritchlow?
No.
Paul Segabiano?
No.
David Selzer?
No.
James Soldner?
No.
George Wendt?
Yes.
Lori Woolrab?
No.
Josh Barnett?
No.
Jacob Beard?
No.
William Casely?
Yes.
Don Cavallini?
Yes.
And chair votes no.
6, yeah. 13 to 6.
We have 13 yes votes. I'm sorry, 6 yes votes, 13 no votes. The motion, the amendment fails. I'll open the floor up for more discussion. Member Beard?
Yes, I'd like to offer an amendment. So I would like to move to amend the motion on the floor, and I'm going to read the applicable language. I don't have a handout. This is available. It's just a few sentences, so
Would you like staff to hand out your motion?
if that would be helpful, yes.
Let's see. I think, as you requested, I think we have a copy for everyone. Thank you. Might help it easier to vote on something. Thank you. Thank you.
It's not for me.
Member Baird, would you like to go over the amendment and also read it before we get a motion on the amendment on the floor? Please?
Yes. On the last sentence on page 54, onto the first sentence of page 55 of the packet, standard 1, I would like to add, and any non-participating dwellings that is within 2,000 feet of a turbine. That applies to residents that will be eligible for a post-implementation sound study. On page 59 of the packet, this is stipulation 5. I'd like to clarify that the decibel level is 40.0 decibels, and also add that any non-participating dwelling within 2,000 feet of a turbine would also be eligible for a post-implementation sound study. I am not, there's another part here under stipulation 7. After discussing with our state's attorney's office, I'm going to not propose this, so strike that. To page 61 of the packet, this is the ZBA finding, page 8, stipulation 9. This is the IDNR recommendation 6. I'd like to add an additional bullet point. If post-implementation studies and monitoring indicate significant effects to the habitat of state-listed species within the Mackinac River INAI site, the applicant will put into place a mitigation plan as recommended by the IDNR. Commentary, these two updates, which is who is eligible for a sound study post-implementation, and then ensuring a mitigation and that there's not an environmental impact to the Mackinac Valley, comes from the testimony, it comes from the hearing, and it simply provides additional assurances that through the Illinois Pollution Control Board guidelines are not violated, and that INAI site, Illinois Department of Natural Resource guidelines are not violated. So once this goes in, if there are no sound issues, if the Mackinac River, if the Hinline Creek area is not impacted, there'll be no action. This simply provides that if there are issues there, that the applicant will mitigate those.
Excuse me, we need a second for the motion to discuss it further. It's there on the part of the chair. Is there a second? Second by Member Erickson. I'm sorry, let's go on with further discussion. Member Selzer.
Just a similar question. Do you know how many that will impact on the 2,000 feet setback and the last change, which has indicated significant effects on the habitat? I'm just wondering how you define significant.
Yeah, for the setback, there are currently 21 non-participating residents that are would be impacted and would require a sound survey. This would require a survey for an additional 16 residents based on the map. So that would go from 21 up to 37. And for the significant impact, that would be between the, I think, Illinois Department of Natural Resources and the applicant. We're using their, what's significant, they're the enforcement mechanism. This is simply to say that we want a mitigation if they have concerns with the habitat. So not being a scientist, I don't have to say, how much wildlife has to die before it's significant. That's not my call, but I think the IDNR would make that determination.
So
thank you. I'm sorry.
Just to follow up to that, is there language you can put that? My fear is, or just that it says if the post-implementation study. So what if I just went and got a study? And so that's why I'm just trying to find out if it's the IDNR or whose study it is. That's all.
Okay, Mr. Beard.
So the study is already in the agreement. The study is going to happen. So this is just saying if the study comes back, says everything's dead, there needs to be a mitigation.
Thank you. Are there other comments, questions, or discussion? Member Schaefer.
I have a question for Mr. Beard. With Mr. Cavallini's amendment and your amendment, and you said something about maybe merging them together. Is there something that you would like to expound on that? I don't know what we're talking about there.
Sorry. His fourth point about the IDNR recommendations, I believe, are also covered in this. So if there's consensus, I'd be willing to add this. I think we could add the sentence to the standard one, but in consultation with that's maybe a legal question, but I believe that fit better in the stipulation component of the agreement. But I would have no concern also adding that into the standard one language on page 56. Okay.
Further comments or questions this time? Are you then Are you finished with that then? You like Member Segomano, you're next, and then Member Solner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Casey a moment ago proposed sending this, excuse me, back to the zoning board. And I would just soon, this information goes to our zoning office. That's what we hired the man for, to look at the rules and regulations, and it goes on to the zoning board of appeals. I think we can get a clear understanding what all these amendments really mean and the impact they would have. And I see no reason why we shouldn't give Phil Dick and the zoning board of appeal an opportunity to look at these and make recommendations to the county board. We choose him as the expert. I'm not sitting here saying I'm an expert. I have my opinions, my concerns, but I think, the people that we hire to look after these, they ought to have an opportunity to look at this and make a recommendation to the full board.
Thank you. I need to see what we have for a further discussion. Member Solner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question might be we may need to speak to Mr. Dick on this, but my question is, I don't have any problem with any of these. I think they actually all make a lot of sense. But my question is, how do they mitigate it? In other words, if after the post-implementation sound study comes out and they find that they are above the 41 decibels, how is it mitigated? Do they have to put different blades on it? Do they have to move the tower? I'd kind of like to know what the answer to that is. One of the things I do like about it, again, is the fact that the applicant will, I would assume, do due diligence to make sure that the towers are placed, far enough away to not cause a problem, rather than moving a tower or whatever. But I was just wondering what the procedure would be to mitigate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to confer a minute with staff. Beard, you did confer with staff on the legal staff on your amendment, right? At the time. Thank you. You're asking about the process that would take place then, Mr. Solner?
Again, mainly I just want to know what happens. Again, if after the towers are up and running, they do the study, they find that they're above the 41 decibel, does that mean they just can't use that tower? Do they have to try and find different blades? Do they have to move it? I guess I'm just wanting to know what the mitigation would be.
And I agree. If your question, we can't add to the record from the public hearing as it was presented, and that was something that would have had to been asked at that time, unless you want, we would require additional public hearing to do so. Remember, we are obligated to follow what was offered at that time.
Okay. Well, I guess that's what we'll do then. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Rankin, we're still in a discussion on Member Baird's amendment that you have in front of you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question's pretty brief. I mean, I assume that the ZBA had the ability to do any of these things in their original hearing. Why weren't they included in the first place? And is the addition of any of these changes, what are the unintended consequences that come because of these changes? I don't know that because there hasn't been any testimony on any of this. There's nothing in the record that would state very clearly what effects these would have, and I don't have the expertise to be able to understand what that is either. I'd like to, maybe hear from the rest of, my colleagues in terms of how do we vote on something when we don't know what the outcome would potentially be? It's making decisions and this isn't a shot at Mr. Beard, to be a shot at me too, from a non-expert. None of us are experts in this field, and none of us have any sort of real idea as to what an impact would be with any of these changes. I'd like to know beforehand. I think it gets to Member Segoviano's point of making sure that we have, proper people that have credentials and that understand this as to what the impact could potentially be. So I'm really curious as to what, and maybe this is a staff question too, as to what the unintended consequences are of these changes. Well, and maybe to pile onto that too, I mean, has that been evaluated? Have we evaluated at any point in time what the effects of these would be, or do they just sound good?
Anyone like to respond to Member Rankin's question at this time? Member Barnett, you would be first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I guess this sort of goes hand in hand with Member Rankin's comments. I appreciate very much that every member of the board is entitled to bring amendments forward when a proposal is brought before us. That's part of our duty, right, is to watch out for the citizens that we represent, and that's a tool that we have available to us. And I also appreciate very much that Member Beard, I think, has done a lot of research and has done his due diligence in bringing these proposals forward, and I'm sure Member Cavallini did the same thing with his. I suppose what makes me nervous about this particular proposal, and really anyone that comes forward like this in such a complex issue as a wind farm, is that this was passed out to us moments ago, and we're expected to judge, as Member Rankin had pointed out, the unintended consequences of what some of these things could be within a matter of moments, and it did not go through the due diligence process before the zoning board, and has not been given the opportunity to be vetted through public hearing. And me sitting here reading these over during this discussion, I think that these sound okay, but maybe not. And I don't think I'd be doing a responsible job as a member of the county board or a responsible job representing the citizens in my district to vote on something like this in an issue that has received considerable attention and is very complex without it being properly, I think, vetted and really thought through by staff as well as the board members as a whole.
Thank you. We're still going to have our discussion on the amendment as such. Let's limit our discussion to the amendment at this time. Member Casely.
I appreciate that Member Barnett and Member Rankin don't know exactly what this would do, and I think that that's exactly the reason why we need to send this back to the Zoning Board of Appeals to consider the effect of these proposed amendments and report back. And I would therefore move to table this until we can get comments from the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then we could vote in an informed manner. So I move to send it back to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
I think we agree up here that we need to vote on the amendment first, and then I would entertain a motion, since it's not because it's not the primary resolution that's in the packet and on the floor of the board. I hope everybody understands that. I'm going to continue discussion at this time on the amendment. Member Roselli.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I echo many of Member Barnett's comments with regard to process, and so I won't repeat those, except to just emphasize that one of the challenges, the tension I have with on-the-floor amendments of complicated land use agreements, special use permitting like the one we have before us, is that it is difficult to discern potential impact and unintended consequences. And I have absolutely no question to Member Beard's intentions here. These all sound very reasonable, but let me just point out an example. So for me, when I read this, the last on this page that he's handed out, if post-implementation studies and monitoring indicate significant effects to the habitat of state-listed species within the Mackinac River, INAI site, the applicant will put into place a mitigation plan as recommended by the IDNR. And I presume that the reason he put that in is because he wants to ensure that, to strengthen this and not weaken it. But if you look at the actual recommendations, they actually involve far more people than IDNR, and these individuals are extremely qualified. They have, I mean, if you look, in fact, it explicitly says that if During the modification of the compliance of these things, they'll be coordinated by IDNR, USFWS, and with the counsel of Dr. Angelo Caparella, who's a conservation chair of the JWP Audubon Society, the associate professor of vertebrate zoology, Illinois State University, and submitted to the Department of Building and Zoning. And so this modification would actually take some of these individuals, as it's proposed, out of the process. And I mean, just knowing these organizations and these individuals, I think that's a mistake. I think that what is here actually is as strong, if not stronger, than what's being proposed. And so I intend on voting against this.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment presented by Member Beard that you have in front of you? Member Beard.
Thank you. And thank you to my colleagues for their comments. And I completely understand, and this is unfortunately the process that we have with what's before us only being approved less than a week ago. So this is the process. Regarding we don't know what the unintended consequences are, I would also add that what was approved, the final approval was not necessarily done so with the consultation of the applicant. So some of the other stipulations on there is still a lot of work that's going to be done between today and the approval of the building permits. So there may be, based on what was already listed, impacts to turbines, impacts to, based on siting issues, based on a variety of issues. So to say that we know exactly what the map is going to look like down to the radius of every placement would not be accurate. That they made their decision, stipulation 1, moving a handful, 4 of them back to 2,000 feet. That, if you listen to the hearing, that was done, and the applicant did not provide input on those 4 particular ones. The ZBA made that. So I don't think it'd be fair to say we know all of the consequences now, and these are adding additional unintended consequences. And I would also add finally and briefly that what I propose, I've tried to make very limited to say that if Illinois law is being followed, sound and environmental protections, then there is going to be no action required following this. This is simply once it goes in, we're ensuring that sound and environmental protections are in place, and if they are not in a way that harms landowners or the way that harms the Mackinac Creek site, then that needs to be mitigated. So it's not, if there are no Illinois laws, if there are no environmental protections being violated, then these will be null and void.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Member Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would appreciate you'd give me just a little leeway here because I am going to address the amendment. But, I did sit on the Bloomington Zoning Board of Appeals from 2002 to 2011. So I have sat on a zoning board, and I know what type of evidence is presented to a zoning board. We never considered, I don't think we ever considered ourselves the absolute experts, because we always understood that the city council always had the ability to determine the credibility of the witnesses, the sufficiency of the evidence, if certain facts were presented. And so we don't have to blindly defer to the ZBA. We're not required to do that. I never expected the city council to do that to our decisions. With that said, I think the concern here, and I think there's plenty of concern in the testimony here that just says after hearing testimony about noise concerns, even the ZBA has a legitimate concern about the noise, and this is just to tighten up that language to make sure we address those concerns about the noise. I think that it is appropriate to concern ourselves with the noise. There is one thing, though, that really troubles me, and I'm going to point it out now, but a ZBA member went out to a site to listen to the noise. That's testimony outside the record. That should never have been allowed in. Someone should have cut that off. He can't do that. You can't cross-examine that. You can't do anything. ZBA members have no business going out to a site and looking at the site because that is evidence that's being presented that's outside the record. So that really bothers me that that they're taking into consideration. Well, it's not noisy to us. Well, that's your opinion, but you did that outside the record. You didn't give anybody a chance to cross-examine that. So that's another reason why I'm concerned about the noise. I think the ZBA gave that opinion too much weight, and I don't think it should have. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on the amendment by Member Beard? If not, I'm going to take a vote on this. A yes vote is in favor of Member Beard's amendment as presented by Member Beard, which is striking the middle paragraph, page 59. Is that correct, sir?
No, it is adding.
Adding.
And it adds that any non-participating dwelling within 2,000 feet of a turbine would be eligible for the sound study, the post-implementation sound study.
Okay, does everybody understand that? Are we okay? So a yes vote is in favor of Member Baird's amendment, and no vote is a denial. At this time, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll. The chair will vote in case of a tie.
Chuck Erickson,
Yes.
George Gordon,
Yes.
Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Randall Martin,
Yes.
Scott Murphy,
Yes.
Eric Rankin,
No.
Carla Robustelli, Susan Schaefer,
Yes.
Ryan Scritchlow,
Yes.
Paul Segabiano,
No.
David Selzer,
Yes.
James Soldner,
Yes.
George Wendt,
Yes.
Lori Ruwab,
Yes.
Josh Barnett,
No.
Jacob Beard,
Yes.
William Casely,
Yes.
Don Cavallini.
Yes.
We have 14 yes votes, 4 no votes, and so the amendment carries. Now we're back to the original motion as presented in your packet as amended, which was sponsored by Member Robustelli, second by Member Soldner. Comments or questions on the original motion as amended? Member Schaefer.
First of all, I'd like to say that I do appreciate the ZBA for their patience again through a number of hearings and many, many hours of listening to both sides of the issue. And I also want to thank them because I do believe that they listened to some of the comments that we had last month regarding the Invenergy wind farm and the concerns that several of us brought up. A comment that I would like to make about the process that was actually brought up by one of the speakers this morning that I had already written in my notes, it was not something new to me, is that, yes, this has been rushed through. This was approved last week, it was last week, and there is only audio. There is no transcripts. We have the company or the applicant must pay for a court reporter, and we still don't have those to read. And the number of hours having to listen to those when we don't have that kind of time to do that makes it very challenging for the members of the board when you can read a whole lot faster than you can listen to 3 or 4 hours of audio. I can read a lot more in 3 or 4 hours than on that. So I think the process, and I've always been one on this since when I was involved before I became on the board in the process of the ZBA hearings. So I want to bring that up, and I think that this is an issue that maybe that we need to address later. If there's another one of these or another controversial topic that we may have this kind of thing for, that we make sure we give ourselves enough time and give everyone enough time to be able to review all of the evidence that's been presented in these large cases, in these major cases. The next thing I want to bring up is, like I said, although I appreciate the ZBA, one of the things I found most unsettling was what I believed was the most credible witness that was at the hearing wrote the IPCB standards and said that those standards are not valid for wind farms and recommended different standards, recommended lower numbers. And yet I mean, to me, that's the most credible witness that was at the hearing on that. And that's my opinion. And I don't believe that was taken into consideration, which is why some of these amendments have been proposed, is to put some of these things farther back, because the levels that were suggested by that witness were much lower than what our standards say. So I think that was the biggest thing for me. Whether or not it's valid, I don't know. I'm not the expert, but he is, and that's what I took it as. And the final thing is that these are even taller. It was been presented that these are even taller. These are tall as a 40-story building. I mean, a 40-story building, and you've got 2 or 3 of them surrounding your home, 1,500 or 1,600 feet away, maybe 2,000 feet away. Waterston Towers is 26 stories tall. So you can almost double the height of Waterston Towers. And I mean, yes, it's jobs, it's clean energy. I understand all of that. However, do we really need 40-story buildings in McLean County? Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Member Casely.
Again, I would like to move to send this back to the Zoning Board of Appeals to consider the effect of Member Beard's amendments, or proposed amendments, to the permit. And I think that otherwise we're just kind of proceeding without knowing what we're doing. And I think it's important that these amendments be considered fully. And so I'm moving to send it back to the Zoning Board of Appeals and to table it until we get a report back from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Is there a second to the motion to send this back to the ZBA? A motion by Member Casely, second by Member Erickson.
May I address it, Mr. My second?
Yes, just a minute, please.
Okay.
We can only discuss the motion to send this back at this time, so we'll try to limit your discussion the best we can in that area. This would require, so you'll know, legal staff tells me another public hearing as well. Okay, Member Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like if it's sent back, I'd also like to understand why that turbines 83, 85, and 95 are given a 2,000-foot setback, and turbine number 27 was given a 2,000-foot setback based on the issue of noise concerns. Well, if 2,000 foot is the relevant number, I'd like to know why that wasn't applied to everybody. So I'd like that question asked of the ZBA.
It's difficult for me to conduct a question to the ZBA at this point.
Well, then, all right, then I'm making it part of the motion. It's simple process.
Casely, do you want to amend your motion with a kind of amendment? Would you like to state the language again, such that this can be reserved back to ZBA with Member Erickson's request? Member Erickson, would you like to add language to it so we have it down officially, please?
Yes, I would just like an explanation. It's in the standards for recommending. It's page 54. The sentence starts, after hearing testimony about noise concerns, this board recommends turbine numbers 83, 85, and 95 will need to be set back at least 2,000 feet from the Taylor residence on parcel 0419-200-006. And turbine number 97 will need to be set back at least 2,000 feet from the Jolly residence on parcel 04-32-100-002. My question is, the issue is, why was that not applied universally, a 2,000-foot setback to everybody?
So there is a motion on the floor to send this back to ZBA with Member Erickson's questions added and approved by Member Casely on the floor. Any other comments at this time? Please limit your discussion to the motion to return this issue to the ZBA. Member Solner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'd like to know, and I think a lot of us would like to know specifically what does this mean? I know you said that it goes back for another special hearing. Will there have to be all new testimony, or will it just be testimony on these amendments? Will there be witnesses only on these amendments? Is this going to be a full-blown application hearing, or is it just relate to these amendments?
Obviously, I'll have to refer to our legal staff for your answer.
Yeah, I think from our what we've looked at on this so far, it's not exactly clear after it would be republished. My advice at that point would be to open it to everything, to any additional evidence that's going to be at that public hearing. If somebody shows up and says, I want to speak on this issue, my advice to you would be to allow them to speak.
But what you're saying, is it on any part of the hearing? In other words, if they want to argue over whether this particular tower is too close to the village or whatever the issue is, are going to open it up to everything or only to these items?
Well, the entire thing is being sent back with the amendment. So it's the entire thing that's going back to the zoning board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member Rankin?
Maybe this is for administration as well. Can you confirm the relative cost for a hearing, just an average as to what that costs the county to hold a ZBA hearing, just out of curiosity?
You know, I'm not sure I can. The general cost, would be for publication. The single major cost would be for meeting the requirements of publication and notice for rehearing. We would obviously have to have court reporters for these hearings. And additionally, we do have some staff time, some staff on overtime, although the majority of staff that have been attending hearings are salaried staff, and so there's no direct cost.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Member Segoviano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we find ourselves in some troubling waters here on the last two issues. But I think if we'll go back and look at our records of those individuals serving on the Zoning Board of Appeals, each and every one of them was approved unanimously by this board. Trust and respect for those individuals. I don't know how many members of this board, including myself, sat through each and every one of those hearings and listened to the sworn testimony. That's what the Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with, and ramifications and standards that they have to analyze, value their input, and then make a recommendation to this body. They can give us a unanimous opinion and approve this. A moment ago it was said, you know, that we're not experts on this, so what do? We have several boards that we count on, that we appointed to listen to sworn testimony. I think each and every one of us have received letters opposing this project, but we've also received letters of support for this. We talk about the noise and the flicker and what have you, and you know what damage it will do. I took the opportunity to talk to an individual out at Heartland Community College about the turbine they have out there. They absolutely praise what it does for their.
We have to keep our discussion to the tabling motion, whether or not. I understand, but okay.
Well, the ramification is being presented here, and changing all this is due to sending it back. And there again, you know, are we all going to sit there and listen and then make our own decision? Maybe it's time that we dissolve the Zoning Board of Appeals and we become the zoning board. We sit through all these hearings and we make a recommendation to ourselves that perhaps we wouldn't even agree with the decisions we make.
Thank you. Any other comments? Last round here on this. We're still making comments. Excuse me, Member Erickson. I'm sorry, Member Sulzer, then Member Erickson. With your permission, sir.
I was just going to say, I want to agree with Mr. Segoviano. I mean, I too served as the chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the town of Normal from 1989 to 2000. And those are not easy hearings, and you can sit there for hours and hours. And you cannot block out their opinion on which person they want to give more credibility to or not. I think they've done a stellar job. I, for one, think that's the reason we have appointed that board to do that. And I don't support sending it back to ask them to reopen this whole case again, thinking it's going to have a different outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Last comments before we take a vote on the motion to send this back to ZBA as amended. Member Erickson and then Member Woolrath.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I mean, I always have looked at it as we are more of the appellate court role in this process, and that I mean, you don't do away with a trial court, because a trial court hears the actual evidence, but the appellate court doesn't. The appellate court gets to go through and read the transcripts and decide if they accept the sufficiency of the evidence. We get to determine credibility of witnesses. That's our right. We get to determine whether we think that sufficient evidence was presented. So I'm always troubled by the idea that we always have to blindly defer our role in this to some other board or some other committee or a blue ribbon panel or anything we want to call it. I mean, ultimately, we are the ones who make the final decision, so I think that's our right. I have to say that I'm just incredibly troubled by the idea that a ZBA member went out and listened to the turbines without that being cross-examined. I think that taints the whole process that took place down there. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Woolrath.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to commend Member Beard on bringing forth this amendment and then striking the third paragraph. I think they're very reasonable and important to protect the health and of course the environment. I'm extremely concerned about the environment with these projects, but I think overall the wind turbines are a much better source of energy than we're going to get from just about anything else, perhaps save solar in this county. So I think these are very reasonable in the scope of this gigantic project. While I'm not an expert and I don't know 100% for sure, they feel to me very strongly that they are minimal requests to be made of the company. And so I don't see any need to bring this back again and reopen the hearings. And so I'm in favor of voting for this project as it currently stands.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Member Schaefer?
I'm very torn on whether or not to send this back because I'm not sure that any outcomes will be any different. And we can give direction, we can, or if they open it up to everything, I'm still not sure that anything is really going to change. I do like Member Erickson's analogy of the appellate court, and we are the final, ones. We can question anything, whether it's the ZBA, because like I said, they've done a good job. They really spend their time, but we don't have to agree with what their conclusions are and looking at what the witnesses are. So I'm not sure that sending it back would make any difference at this point. That's my opinion.
Member Johnson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to echo and reemphasize Member Beard's earlier comment before we voted overwhelmingly for the amendment, that the process is flexible enough as we go forward to deal with these minor amendments that we have gone ahead and approved. And so I will be supporting or not supporting sending it back. And I think the reasonable thing to do is just to go ahead and call the question and go ahead and vote on the package and application as it stands for the board. Thank you.
The question has been called. Is there an objection? If not, we will vote on the motion by Member Casely to send this original motion back to the ZBA as amended by Member Erickson at the time. A yes vote will mean that we will vote to send it back to the ZBA, and no vote would be to keep it here at the time. And I'll ask the clerk to call the roll, and the chairman will vote.
Chuck Erickson,
Yes.
George Gordon,
No.
Mark Johnson,
No.
Randall Martin,
No.
Scott Murphy,
No.
Eric Rankin,
No.
Carla Robustelli, Susan Schaefer,
No.
Ryan Scritchlow,
No.
Paul Segabiano,
No.
David Selzer,
No.
James Soldner,
No.
George Wendt,
Yes.
Lori Woolrab,
No.
Josh Barnett,
No.
Jacob Beard, William Casely,
Yes.
Don Cavallini,
Yes.
Mr. McIntyre.
No. There are 16 no votes, 3 yes votes. The motion to send this back to ZBA. I'm sorry, you have 4 yeses?
4.
2, 3. So 15 no votes, 4 yes votes. Motion has failed. We'll back to the original motion as in your packet as amended by Member Beard. Any other comments or questions on the amended motion? If none, then we will take a roll call vote. A yes vote is to approve the motion as amended by Member Beard. That's in your packet. A no vote is to not approve it. Chair will vote.
Chuck Erickson,
No.
George Gordon,
Yes.
Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Randall Martin,
Yes.
Scott Murphy, Eric Rankin,
Yes.
Carla Robustelli,
Yes.
Susan Schaefer,
Yes.
Ryan Scritchlow,
Yes.
Paul Segabiano,
Yes.
David Selzer,
Yes.
James Soldner,
Yes.
George Wendt,
George Wendt. Uh-oh, fell asleep.
George Wendt.
Yes. I mean, no. Excuse me. No.
To clarify, that's a no.
Yes.
My vote is no. George.
Okay. We got it. Thank you.
Lori Woolrab,
Yes.
Josh Barnett,
Yes.
Jacob Beard, William Casely,
Yes.
Don Cavallini,
No.
Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, 16-3, right. There are 16 yes votes, 3 no votes. The motion as amended has carried. We'll move on. Now to the Property Committee Chair report. Member Segoviano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one item for action, and I would request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2017 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance, Fairview Building Fund, Facilities Management Department, and that takes a 2/3 vote, and I would move that.
Motion by Member Segoviano, second by Member Scritchlow. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has carried. Any recorded no votes? If none, the motion is unanimous.
We have nothing else to report, Mr. Chairman. Our Property Committee meeting is on the unapproved sheet of pages 28 and 30, and I'd answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We're going to the report of the Justice Committee, Senior Committee Member Robustelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Justice Committee brings 2 items for action. Item E1A, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2017 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance for the Coroner's and Sheriff's Department, and this requires a 2/3 vote, and I so move.
Motion by Member Robustelli. Is there a second? Second by Member Rankin. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The Justice.
Both Member Gordon and Member Wendt voted yes. There's 2/3 votes. Any recorded nay votes? If not, any? The motion carried unanimously. We'll move on.
Second item Justice Committee brings forward is E1B, request approval of renewal and amendment of the intergovernmental agreement between Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services and Mclean County Circuit Clerk, and I so move.
Motion by Member Robustelli. Is there a second? Second by Member Seltzer. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah, both ayes. Motion has passed. There doesn't need to be a nay vote on this one. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Report of the Finance Committee, Chairman Seltzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item we bring for action is item F1A, request approval of an ordinance to the Mclean County Board amending the 2017 combined annual budget and appropriation ordinance from the auditor. Requires 2/3 vote, and I'd so move it.
Motion by Member Seltzer, second by Member Woolrath. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
The next.
I'm sorry. I'm getting in a hurry here a little bit. This is a 2/3 vote. Any recorded nay votes? If none, the motion passes unanimously. We will move on. Thank you.
The next item is item F1B, request approval of an ordinance to the Mclean County Board amending the 2018 combined annual budget and appropriation ordinance in the auditor's office. Requires 2/3 of a vote. I'd so move it.
Motion by Member Seltzer, second by Member Woolrath. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? 2/3 vote required. Those are both yes votes again. I'm sorry. Any to be recorded? If not, motion passes unanimously. Sir?
Final item is request approval of a resolution authorizing the county board chairman to enter into a property tax settlement agreement, and I would so move it.
A motion by Member Seltzer, second by Member Segoviano. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Aye. I'm sorry? One no? Two noes. Yeah, so let the record show Member Robustelli and Member Went, was that an aye or a nay?
That was aye.
And so 2 nay votes in the case Member Robustelli and Member Rankin. Okay, that's a majority, required majority. Motion has carried. Any other comments or questions this time?
We have no other items to bring for action. Thank you.
Thank you. Transportation Committee Chairman Casely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to combine the items G1A, B, and C. These are requests for operating assistance and cooperation with 5 other counties for the operation of show bus. And these are the very same type of resolutions that we have passed in prior years.
Thank you. Member Casely has a motion on the floor to combine items G1A, B, and C. Is there a second? Second by Member Cavallini. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. 2 nay votes. Tell me if I hear. Motion is carried. You have the floor, Member Casely.
I move that we approve an engineering services agreement with the Farnsworth Group for designing Towanda Barnes Road and Ireland Grove Road intersection.
Thank you, Member Casely. Motion by Member Casely, second by Member Barnett. Comments or questions? Member Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a quick comment. I want to thank the City of Bloomington for seeing the foresight to go ahead and approve this in their government. I do want to advocate for more improvement out there. I think what we're doing, obviously it's going to make us safety, help with safety there. I personally think it's more of a convenience for the people that are coming from the north going into the west, State Farm employees or whatever. But to me, there's a lot more improvement needs to be made out there. We're concerned about safety, and I think that I come through that intersection quite a bit, and again, I'm afraid we're waiting for an accident to happen. I hope that's not the case, but I'm going to advocate for more improvements out there in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Member Johnson.
Yes, Chairman. Was wanting to just underscore something that came up in committee. about a private road that is adjacent to Towanda Barns that people use to skirt the intersection and then use the Ponyfield property to come out onto Ireland Grove Road. I was hoping that we could follow up and have the administration send a letter to the Ponyfields asking if they could help maintain their property by getting a gate on that road so that people cannot cut through their property and cause a traffic problem, traffic safety issues coming off of their property. People do not need to be cutting through that private road. The problem is the city of Bloomington has no authority over the road that people are using because it is a private road. But we can work with a good organization like the Pony League to see if they can put a gate at the end of that lane and keep people from using that lane to cut onto Ireland Grove Road. So was just hoping, since it came up in committee, just wanted to get on the public record and full county board that we can reach out to the Ponyfields and see if we can have that, see if we can work with them on that. Thank you.
Thank you. You are on public record and it will be recorded in the minutes. I know that staff is making an effort to work with the city of Bloomington on a declaration if that's a private or public road. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I just have
Member Robustelli?
a comment. I just want to thank the staff that were involved for all their work on this. When this project first came to us, it was, I think, a $1.6 million project. And now we have a project that's less than half of that, but still meets the concerns of safety at that intersection. And I think that is that's a win for all those involved, taxpayers and that intersection. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? We have before you item G1D, request approval for the, as stated. Any other comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm sorry. Both voted yes on the motion. Motion is carried. We'll go on.
Item E is a request for approval of a highway fund resolution for the construction or reconstruction of the Towanda Barns and Ireland Grove Road intersection, and I move that.
Motion by Member Casely, second by Member Murphy. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion is carried.
Finally, subparagraph F, a request for approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance for the highway fund to defray the cost to the county of reconstructing this intersection. And this was originally intended to be a motor fuel tax project, and money was appropriated from the motor fuel tax fund to do this. The city did not go along with a motor fuel tax expenditure on this, and so they're using their local tax funds, and we must as well, and so that's the reason for the emergency appropriation. And the money that would ordinarily have come from the motor fuel tax fund will go to other projects which the county highway department has, and I move that.
Motion by Member Casely. Is there a second? Second by Member Cavallini. This requires a 2/3 vote as well because it's an emergency appropriation. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Any nay votes to be recorded? If not, the motion carries unanimously.
Our general report is found on pages 31 through 36 of the unapproved minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Report of the County Administrator, Mr. Wasson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing additionally for the county board this morning. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll move on to other business and communication. Any comments or from anybody on the floor? I have one comment. The Blue Ribbon Committee is working on their report and will give a progress report to the Health Committee at your committee meeting in April on Monday, April 2nd at 4:30. They have made significant progress. I hope and encourage all the board members to be there for the Health Committee, and they will interact with you and conduct a discussion and information sharing time along with a number of their recommendations. They'll start their writing of the report starting next week, And then there will be a final report filed with us at our next full county board meeting in April. Any comments or questions? 4:30 at the regular Health Committee meeting, April 2nd, Monday, April 2nd. Member Rankin?
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick, I know what's on everybody's mind today. It's a really important primary. But I think that I speak for everybody here on this board when I say what's really on people's mind in March is baseball starting and go Cardinals.
I know there's going to be a retort here. Member Murphy, you have your hand up.
Go Cubs.
All right, thank you. I have approval of the bills yet to conduct, and there have before me the amount of $2,266,475.31. These have been reviewed and recommended for payment by the auditor. Is there a motion? Motion by Member Schaefer, second by Member Cavallini. Comments or questions? If none, all in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion has carried, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Member Wendt and Member Gordon, for your participation.